By Dvar, by Moshe Gomer, and Hashem spoke to Moshe. He said, "Tevואו, Mosbotechem." He spoke about this also in the previous mind. When you come to the land where you are settled, you will make a fire offering for Hashem. Oila is a carbon oila, or a different type of carbon. Hikriv Gomer, and you shall offer up mincha soilas, a fine sifted flour. Meal offering, gomer shaman with oil, yain l'nesach with gomer wine for the libation, etc. Kechol protei mincha and nesachim shnimdu a parsha, like all the details of the meal offering and the libations, the wine offerings that were enumerated in the parsha. You can do a diakrav saying nesienu. It's known the question of Arabeim Yistal diakam medrash based on what the medrash asks over here. To be able to understand. La Meshina Kasu Likre Eretz Yisrael Kan B'Shem Eretz Meshesechem. Why did the Torah change to call Eretz Yisrael the land of your settlements more than the rest of the Torah? Nikras Eretz Canaan it's called the land of Canaan that you're going to. Okay, that's one question. Why, in other words, when it talks about the Mincha, the Nesachim, and so on, does it talk about Eretz Mosbotechem instead of when you will come to Eretz Canaan or some other expression? Also, when you understand Smichus Ha'inyan, the joining or the association, or why one topic in the Torah is next to another topic, that's called Smichus. The pasuk where it says that Hashem spoke when you will come to the land of your settlements. It was said immediately after the conclusion of the entire story of this, what happened with the spies. Especially according to the explanation of the Medrash, that the Medrash actually associates the both of them. After the nation had mourned very much about the entire story with the Meraglim, so Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, go, come and appease them in words of Torah by teaching them the Torah portion about Nesachim. Like it says, like it says immediately after the entire story, it says, speak to the Bnei Yisrael when you will come to the land of your settlements, that you will make a fire offering to Hashem. The L'chura in the Muvan, seemingly it's not understood. Madua dafke parshas Nesachim hi ritzui. Why is specifically the portion, the Torah portion, speaking about the libations? Why is that considered an appeasement? Nichu v'tanchumim, comforting and consoling. On the fact that the nation was mourning very much. It's known the point of explanation of it. But with Drusha, I'm saying the Mamorim that deal with Parshas and Sachim, that in the Alter Rebbe's Sefer the Torah, and the Mamorim of the Rabbeim following it, like the Tzemach Tzedek. So he explains it, and we had this also in the previous Maimer, the same topic. Hagdim be a Maimer Azal, prefacing the explanation what the Chazal say. Whoever reads Kriyashma without film, he could have it's as if he brought an oil without a meal offering, and he brought a carbon shlomim without the libations, without nesach. That's the command of Parshas Sachim. When they bring an oila or a zevach, it must have accompanied with it both the meal offering and the nesachim and the wine libations. Top of the second page of the Maimer Chafei. To preface the idea of karbonos in general. All these things, the carbon oil, the zevach, which we said in the previous Maimer, goes on shlomim, and the meal offering and the nesachim, these are all details in karbonos. So therefore, we need to understand the general idea of karbonos. In a carbon, carbon is from the expression closeness. To the degree that's brought down the Zoyar, the Kurban Ahul, the mystery of the carbon, the secret of the carbon, the inner meaning of the carbon is a mystery that goes up all the way till the secret and mystery of the Ein Sof to the innermost level of the Ein Sof. Like it's also explained in the Mambar of the Frierdiker Rebbe, in Pasir Lagani, the Mambar of the Hilula, Inyan HaKarbanus of Kiruv HaKleiches. Now, what does it mean, Karbanus? From the word Kiruv, it's about our powers being brought close to Hashem, our soul powers becoming more connected with Hashem. Oddly, until the main topic, Shanasa Kiruv, Ben Yisrael Avim, there becomes a closeness between Yidden and the Father in heaven. Until a closeness that they become completely like one. So that's the ultimate idea of Karbonis, a closeness and a joining that the Yidden become completely one. In a close in Karbonis, the general idea of Karbonis is like it says in the voice Yecheskel, to bring to me and to offer up to me fats and blood. These are the two things that a Yid is prohibited to eat. He's prohibited to eat the chaylev, he's prohibited to eat the blood. These two things are the primary part of the carbon. These are solely for the mizbeach. Other parts of the carbon, depending on what type of carbon, because sometimes go to the kayanim, sometimes go to the owners are bringing the carbon. But it's always every carbon of an animal, the chaylev, the fats, and the blood are reserved for the mizbeach. This means though in the karbonis there were many different avoiders, and they offered up many specific parts of the carbon. The kalmakim still in all close in the karbonis. The general idea of the karbonis is the offering up of the fats and the blood. It's known the explanation, the significance of the offering of the fats and the blood. The movements, the approaches of a person is in general divided into two types of traveling and going along. These are included in what said that I will make you a mahalchim in the plural. Two types of going. Bisalachti is also referring to two types of going. Either mamata or mata, either a traveling and a going from below to above, or from above to below. And what are these two types of goings? How do they express themselves? So he says, these are expressed in the service of a person, and the general idea of turning away from bad and doing good. And when you talk about Sur Merana, these two types of goings, when we're talking about Torah mitzvahs, mitzvahs asim, mitzvahs lois, it's the two types of mitzvahs, the positive, the proactive mitzvahs, and the negative mitzvahs. To such a degree, also in the wisdom of the Torah, there's also both approaches. The idea of wisdom and intellect, first you have to have like the sur mera, the negation. First you have to take away what is wrong. When a person is understanding an idea, they need to first cut away anything that interferes with the idea, anything that doesn't make sense, anything that's not logical. They say, no, that doesn't fit. This doesn't fit. This doesn't fit. And then afterwards, he reaches the true idea of the intellect. It's actually similar to what we've also had in the Maimer. When you make a vessel, first you have to cut away the outside part. Say if it's a block of wood, first of all, you cut around and you remove all outside things, then you made the whole inside. But the same thing in understanding, there's the sur mera, and then asay toiv. Remove everything that is not logical, doesn't fit in, and then you reach the truth. Mitzvah Chachmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the true wisdom of the Eibishter halacha, which is the halacha. The way it comes down to a person that studies Torah and becomes one with him. This is also the idea of the blood and the fats. Because the blood's idea is that it's boiling. Top of the third page of the Maimon. Just like fire, that goes up from above to below, from below to above. So that is the concept of blood. It's rising upwards. The idea of fats is the idea of pleasure and delight. As it's known that that's what chaylev symbolizes. Like the simple idea is, it says that good news makes even the bone become fat. But through the light, it's added in the bone. It adds in the fats. There's a story about, I think, the Nachum Chernobler, I think it was, that became fat from Amini Eshmerava because he had such enjoyment in it. And so we find anything that's praiseworthy, anything that's good and best is called fats. Like it says, Kol Chelav Lavayim. Kol Chelav Lavayim doesn't just mean literal fats, but it means the best is given to Hashem. So we see that Chelav has to do with the best, has to do with enjoyment. But the klolus in an atainu kul ba'oifen the malmayl lamato, as opposed to blood, which is passion and heat and going upwards, it's the idea of chelav, which is the light, is about coming from above to below. He doesn't need to go looking for it somewhere else. The ultimate delight is when the person within himself finds delight and enjoyment. It's not about searching outward. Like different explanations, what does it mean? The misanig ba'atzmai. There's also an idea. Chassidus talks about the highest levels in the Eibishter is Shashui Amelch Batzmusei, Hashem's delight and enjoyment within himself. Be that as it may. So delight is about the other direction. It's going from above to below. That's chaylev. Going from below to above, that's dam. That's the two types of halicha that we spoke about. It's also connected with Sur Meran Asay Toiv, also connected with Mitzvah Asa, Mitzvah Loisa. While the Nemar, concerning this, it says, Lahakriv li chaylev adam, to offer up to me and to bring to me the fat and the blood. What does that mean? While that after do other explanation, this is similar to the well-known teaching of the Alter Rebbe, al-Pasuk, what says in the Pasuk, Adam ki yakriv mekem, a person that will offer up from you. The main point of a carbon is that the person has to offer himself. That's why it says Adam ki yakriv mekem, that the carbon is coming from you, from within the person. The person himself is bringing the carbon. And then the pasuk goes on to say, and all the details, the min habehemer from the animal, min haboker from the cattle, min hatzayin from the sheep, like they're in the service of a person, that a person needs to bring his inner animal, and some people's animal is as frightful and as angered as an ox, as a boring ox, and some are as calm as sheep, etc. They're more into taivas, like sheep graze all day. Similar way, that there's a physical carbon, and the idea of carbonus is about a person offering themselves up to Hashem, and they need to make a carbon of themselves. So the carbon within themselves is to bring their chaylev and dam, which means their passion, their heat, like we said before, that the dam is the heat and passion, and the chaylev is their delight, their enjoyment. So he says that has to do with the malmayl lamata malmayl in the person. So this difference that we just now said between chaylev and dam is also the difference between oila and zevach on the one hand, and the mincha and the nesachim on the other hand. This is also a point that we had in the previous mind, that the oil and the carbon is the idea of bringing it on the mizbeach, and it's burnt up in fire. And this fire is descends from the heavens after the kohen, the human being, the normal person has to bring the fire, then the fire comes down from heaven, carbon receives and takes the carbon. And now this carbon is burnt up in the fire and goes upwards into the heavens. It's the idea of the elevation and the going that's from below to above. Similar to the rushing of the blood that we spoke about before, the heat and passion of the blood. In addition to the oil and zavach part of the carbon, there's also the idea of the meal offering and the nesach. Soilers, this is fine sifted flour, the shemen and oil, the yayin and wine. These three things, the soilers, the shemen, and the yayin, as opposed to the carbon comes from an animal, from a chai, but the flour offering is made from wheat that grows. The oil is made from olives. The wine is made from grapes. These are all the types of tzemach. And it's not just the level of tzemach, the growing things, but also v'chein melech, and also the salt is brought on the mizbeach, like it says, v'chol carbon ben chaska v'melech timlach shu doimen. All the carbons that you're bringing up as a gift to Hashem, you should salt it with salt, and that's the level of the inanimate. Through bringing these different things, the soilus, the shem, and the yayin on the mizbeach, comes the drawing down from above to below, which the chaylev symbolizes the fats that tainug is. Another idea is shem and v'yayin beruchnis uba'avoida, top of page Chav Zayin, the fourth page. Idea of oil and wine spiritually in avoida him chochmo bina. This is the idea of wisdom and understanding, the level of moichin, intellect. The general idea of intellect is calmness. It's not about excitement. Emotions, midas, that's about excitement. Maimer, like it says in the Zoyar, Sov, the old man, Daitoi, Sosim Chulu, his mind is concealed, closed off, very deep, in other words. Shochich v'shokit. It is calm. It is in a state of quietude and rest. So that idea is bedugmas inyan atainuk. That is similar to the idea of the light, chaylev, which is the fat. We said before, that's the drawing down from above to below. So here's another association between the mincha and the nesachim with the level of the hamshachim al ma'lamata, because it has to do with intellect, and intellect is also about quietude and coming from above to below, the level of tainuk, the level of chaylev. Another thing that shows about the nesachim having to do with going from above to below, what we had in the previous Maimer V'oidzos, in addition to this, the perfection of the idea of Nesachim is that they would pour the wine upon the Mizbeach. And they descend to these holes in the ground that descend all the way to the aquifer, like we mentioned the previous Maimer. This was the lower waters that were separated from the upper water. In this low world, that there's no lower world than it, the level of the Tahaim is the lowest of the low. It's Sham Lamata Mata B'Yoser, over there in the lowest most place. We draw down the most highest of levels, even higher than the most high, even something that's beyond the level of high. So we see this contrast between Oila and Zevach, which is about going up, idea of Dam, and versus the Hamshachim al Mailamata, which is the Shem and the Nesachim, and maybe even the Melach, etc. Any questions before we go on? Ois Gimel on page Chav Zayin, the fourth page of your copies, line 13. Indian, to explain this matter more, it says in the pasuk, "Vim hey ochel ye ochel." It says in Parshas Tzav, where it talks about the karbanos, if eating it will be eaten. So the Chazal want to know, why does the pasuk decide to use a double expression about the eating concerning the karbanos? The Chazal said, "V'shtei achilos hakos medaber." The pasuk is referring to two consuming of the karbanos. Achilos adam, the fact that the human being consumes the carbon, whether it's the koyanim, whether it's the owners of the carbon, achilos mizbeach, or the mizbeach's consuming of the carbon. It's known the explanation concerning this according to Chassidus. Shachilos mizbeach, what the mizbeach consumes of the carbon, it's a type of eating. That concerning that, the Hashem says to Knesset Yisrael, I have eaten. It says over there in the beginning of Shir Hashirim, I think, Achalti Yarim Divshi Shesisim Yenim Chalvi. It talks about, not the beginning of Shir Hashirim, I'm sorry, a little bit later in the beginning. The point is, I think it's chapter 5. So it talks about the idea of karbonos, is talking about Hashem's eating and consuming it. Because of the carbon tamid, Shabayin Nichal falls in karbonos, like it says by the tamid carbon, and the carbon tamid is really included the general idea of karbonos. Karbon yilach mili ishai, by carbon, my bread for my fire. So we call the karbonos Hashem's bread. It's the idea of the bread. That through the bread, we are supporting, Yidden are supporting their Father in heaven. Therefore, the Yidden are called Hashem calls the Yidden my shepherd. Why is the Hashem called the Yidden my shepherd in Shir Hashirim? Because they are the one that give me my parnasa, they sustain me, they give me my food. We are feeding Hashem. So the question is, what does the idea of feeding Hashem mean? He's going to examine what is the purpose of food and eating by a human being down here. And based what food and eating does to a human being down here, we'll understand how karbonos feed Hashem, what they accomplish for Hashem. The idea behind this is the idea of bread is it joins the soul with the body. Like it says in the pasuk, lechem levav enish yisod, that bread helps support the heart of a person. When there is a weakening in the matter, when a person is called by the word enosh, enosh is showing of weakening. There's a pasuk that says that the heart is twisted and it's weak and sick. So we see the word enosh is related to sickness or illness or weakness. So when a person is on level of enosh, for this, the bread helps that it causes a joining of the soul and the body. It gives strength to the person. That is similar to this above, top of page Chavches. Just like the soul fills the body, and therefore you need to have the soul and the body to be joined together by the food. So today, which fills the world, and we need to have a connector, a joiner, something to like assist that joining between Hashem and the world. For this sake, you need to have something that's going to join. That through that should be able to be the joining of Hashem with the world. And seemingly Hashem and the world are two opposites. Because the word world is an expression, concealment and covering. Still, in all, Hashem fills the world, And he fills the world not the way the world stops being world, but as the world is called world, which is concealment, which is the opposite of Hashem. And how does this happen? This joining between Hashem and the world, just like the joining of the soul and the body, is accomplished through the avoid of Yidden down here below, in a way of an inspiration down here below. In the terminology of Kabbalah and Chassidus, halas mayim nukvim, the raising up, the elevation of feminine waters, which is another fancy term for the inspiration down here below. Just like all matters of above, they are dependent upon a person's service, that everything that takes place above is dependent upon us. Like what it says in the Zohar, in Pirkei Avos, Dam Malamaylo, comes the Chassidus Taich and says that what it says in Pirkei Avos, know that what is from above is from you. It means that it's made by you, it's accomplished by you. Everything above occurs because of the Yid down here. So just like all things above happen through what we do, so to also joining in the union of the Eibishter with the world. It's also accomplished, Nasai the Avodas Bnei Yisrael is also done through the Avodah of the Yid. Okay, do a Teres Baal Shem Tov al Pasuk, like it's known, the teaching of Baal Shem Tov al Pasuk, the Ata Kodesh Yoshev Tilos Yisrael. You are holy, sitting upon the praises of the Yid. What does that mean? Hashem on his own is holy and removed and separated and aloof and beyond everything. So it should be in a way of sitting. What is the idea of sitting? That should be drawn down below, just like a person that sits, instead of standing upright and everything is higher and higher, he lowers himself. So the same thing for Hashem to be Yoshev, that instead of being holy and aloof and removed, he should settle down there below. This is through the praises of the Yidden. This is the general avoid of Yidden, is included in the term the praises of the Yidden. And the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is inclusive of here. He says, each and every one of them, even someone that sinned, is a Yid. And he goes under the category of Yisrael. So this is what every Yid is involved in, bringing Hashem down here into the world. And that is just like our bread, that food that we joins our soul and our body. So the same thing through our avodah, through that becomes the joining of the true neshama of the world, Hashem with the world. That Hashem should fill the world. That's the idea of the service of the karbanis. That's called eating. The dogmas hachila, it's similar to food. That through food becomes the joining of the neshama by the body, by a human being, down here below. Similar to this also happens above. Through the avodas adam mimcha that we said before, that kol malum shel ma'ila is mimcha. Everything that's above comes from you. So therefore, this is the point of the karbanis. The karbanis is called Hashem's bread, Hashem's food, that we cause the joining of Hashem, who's the soul of the world, with his body, which is the world itself. Tomorrow, we're going to go on to explain there are different ways how this can manifest itself and show itself. And this is dependent upon the different aspects of the karbanis. And just like when we have our own soul in our body, there could be different ways how our neshama could manifest itself in the body. Any questions?